please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us on What's Hot. I'm Shireen Bhan. The top 5 stories that we're tracking for you this evening. Donald Trump follows through on his pledge, signs the order to impose stiff tariffs on imported steel and aluminum. 17 countries, including India, raised the issue at the WTO. India says the US's move could lead to new tariff barriers and a trade war. Steel tycoon Sajjan Jindal called on the government to take a cue from Trump and impose tariffs to safeguard domestic industry. Adds that import duties are needed not just for steel, but for all sectors. SBI Chairman Rajneesh Kumar sends an SOS to the centre and states, says all banks are concerned about bad loans in the power sector, adds that no long-term power purchase agreements are being signed and progress under the Uday scheme is less than expected. Indian equities make fresh 2018 lows as bears dominate the week on the Lal Street. Both the Sensex and the Nifty down over 2% for the week. Mid-caps fare worse, with the index down 4%. The Supreme Court upholds the legal sanctity of passive euthanasia, allows living wills wherein people can give instructions about the medical treatment they would like administered when terminally ill. But let's start with an exclusive news break at this hour. There's a twist in the tail in the race for Binani Cements. The company will most likely challenge the resolution plan under the Insolvency Tribunal. They argue that the resolution professional is not acting in the interest of shareholders. Ritu Singh, who's been tracking the development, joins us now. Ritu, there is perhaps a ray of hope that's come in for Binani Cements because of what the NCLAT has directed.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a relief really for Binani Cements, and more importantly, this will set the precedent for many other companies that are currently undergoing insolvency proceedings. What the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal has ruled today is that the bidding process be transparent and the resolution professional, which in this case is Vijay Kumar Iyer of Deloitte, take into consideration the views expressed by Binani Cements suspended directors, suspended because the resolution profession, of course, has taken over the management of the company. What they have to say is that these promoters should be involved in discussions, not to say in any manner to interpret this as the promoters being allowed to bid for the company. What they're saying is that the promoters should have a point of view and they should be part of the entire resolution process. Binani, on its part, has been arguing that the RP is not acting in the interest of shareholders. Why? Because they say they are grossly underselling the company. They claim that back in 2015, there was an independent valuation done on behalf of the lenders, which pegged the company's mining rights alone at about 11,000 crore rupees, and the replacement cost for Binani Cements assets at about 17,300 crore rupees. So put together, the bids that have come in now from Ultratech and Dalmia at about 6,000 to 7,000 odd crore rupees are not even a third of that value, and therefore Binani argues that the company is being grossly undersold, and therefore they want to be made part of the process. They've also separately argued that the IRP should not have entertained IDBI Bank's claims that came in last minute for that 1,500 crore rupee guarantee that they seek to invoke, because Binani claims that they never defaulted on those loans to begin with. So these are some of the arguments that Binani is going to put forward. But of course, this will set a precedent for all other IBC cases as well. And it will be interesting if the promoters can now really, shift the course of the discourse itself and influence the bids that will come in for their companies.
All right, Ritu, appreciate you joining us. So the battle for Binani Cements getting even more fierce now, and let's see which way this is finally headed. But the big story tonight, late last night in the White House's Roosevelt Room, surrounded by steel and aluminum industry workers, Donald Trump put pen to paper and signed 2 proclamations which could effectively trigger a trade war between the world's richest economy and other superpowers. Ignoring warnings from the US major trade partners, Trump signed orders to impose 25% tariff on imported steel, 10% duty on imported aluminum. The new import duties will come into force from the 23rd of this month. Kristen Walker has more.
After days of confusion, today President Trump made his new tariff plan official, flanked by steel and aluminum workers. He says the plan will help.
A strong steel and aluminum industry are vital to our national security, absolutely vital. Steel is steel. You don't have steel, you don't have a country.
The president says tariffs, which are taxes on imports, are necessary to counter cheap goods from countries like China. The plan will impose 25% tariffs on steel and 10% on aluminum. Canada, the biggest supplier of steel and aluminum to the U.S., and Mexico will be exempt as those countries renegotiate NAFTA with the United States. Mr. Trump indicating other countries could also be spared, but stressing American workers come first.
The workers who poured their souls into building this great nation were betrayed, but that betrayal is now over. I'm delivering on a promise I made during the campaign, and I've been making it for a good part of my life.
But tonight, opposition from many top Republicans who warn it could spark a trade war.
I'm just not a fan of broad-based, across-the-board tariffs. You'll have a lot of collateral damage, not just consumers, but businesses.
And the tariff plan has also split the White House. While proponents celebrated today, top economic advisor Gary Cohn resigned over the issue. Today, the president singling him out during his final cabinet meeting.
He's going to go out and make another couple of $100 million, and then he's going to maybe come back. He might come back, right? We'll be here. Absolutely.
The plan set to take effect in 15 days. Kristen Welker, NBC News, the White House.
So the Trump tariffs now a reality. Now 17 countries, including India, China, Russia and Brazil, have escalated their concerns on the Trump tariff order with the World Trade Organization or the WTO. They allege that the US is raising tariffs beyond its WTO commitments. Meanwhile, back home, steel tycoon Sajjan Jindal believes that India should take a cue from Trump and impose tariffs on steel imports. He had earlier tweeted, and I quote, "The steel industry is very strategically important for every developed or developing nation. What real Donald Trump has done in the US is an important and positive step towards safeguarding this industry." Well, Rituparna Bhuyan joins us now with both those developments. Ritu, so Sajjan Jindal wants India to bend it like Trump, but the government clearly not happy with the tariff moves by President Trump.
Well, 17 countries, including India, expressed concern at the WTO on these tariffs which have been imposed. So what will be India's strategy going forward? Well, according to Commerce Secretary Rita Teotia, who met us today, they are looking at the fine print of the notification that will be issued, because the United States is taking giving the logic of national security to impose these tariffs, and till now this has not happened anywhere in the world. So they'll study the notification, and further course of action will be then decided by the Commerce Ministry and other countries, including EU and China. Meanwhile, interesting reactions coming in from the Indian industry. As you said, Sajjan Jindal tweeted today asking Indian government to take a cue from what United States has done and impose tariffs and safeguard duties on products imported to India. I'll just quote 2 lines from his tweet where he said that, and I quote, "We have to safeguard domestic manufacturers come what may. US President-like decisions are required irrespective of what the vote bank demands." So now we'll have to wait and see what the course of action countries like India takes on this issue, on US imposing or going to impose tariffs, enhanced tariffs on steel and aluminium. With that, it's back to you.
Well, thanks very much, Ritu. Well, India has already imposed safeguard duties in the past when it comes to imported steel from China. But Sajjan Jindal here talking about higher customs duties altogether. I spoke with the Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog, Rajiv Kumar, and he said that the world cannot afford a full-blown trade war, although India may be spared from the bad impact of it. And that's because we are a very small part of global trade. Listen in.
You know, it's very clear that tariff wars and, new forms of protectionism, etc., are not the right way to go forward. This is history is replete with all these examples. So I wish the U.S. the very best, and I hope this will not lead to a all-out trade war or tariff war, as it were, which can only do us harm. But on the Indian side, you had heard the Prime Minister speaking at Davos, and which is that we are in favor of globalization and liberal economic order.
So then how do you, what would your response be to somebody like Sajjan Jindal, who's saying that India should do what the US is doing when it comes to the steel sector, for instance, specifically?
very far from me, very sort of immodest of me to be commenting on a doyen, industrial doyen like Sajjan Jindal. So I'll just hold my brief for the moment.
Okay, but you believe that India should continue to remain open, and is your fear that if for instance, there seems to be a watering down when it comes to President Trump's own tariff order, do you believe that this could lead to a full-blown trade war, or do you think that this is going to be a skirmish?
I hope not. I just hope not. I just hope not, and I hope better sense will prevail, because the world can hardly afford, in these very turbulent technology times, in this world of great disruptions, we can hardly afford a full-fledged, a full-blown tariff war among the major trade partners. The good thing about India is that, with 1.6% of share in manufacturing trade and 2% combined in trade and services, we are not yet so dependent on external demand.
Right.
So therefore, we may remain in some sense, protected. And because we are dependent on our domestic consumption demand for growth and investment demand. So luckily, we might be spared, the bad effects of this.
Well, that's the Vice Chairman of the Niti Aayog there on the tariff wars. Moving now to the Lal Street, the stock market's well and truly on a weak footing. We saw red on the screen once again today, and this after a promising start. Bears taking control in the last hour, erasing all the gains, both on the Sensex and the Nifty. Marginal losses is where we close. This is the 7th time in the last 8 sessions that we're seeing the markets close with losses. No prizes for guessing. Bank stocks leading the fall once again. They continue to remain under sustained pressure. No respite for the mid-caps either. Saw sharper cuts compared to the blue chips. Well, the latest on SBI's concerns over exposure to the power sector days after the Power Minister told CNBC TV18 that State Bank of India is worried about its exposure to Adani Power and Tata Power's Mundra projects. There is clarity that's come in from SBI Chief Rajneesh Kumar. Speaking exclusively to us, he said the concerns are not just SBI's, but all lenders to these power plants. He highlighted the lack of long-term power purchase agreements as a key problem. Take a listen.
It is not SBI. It is SBI on behalf of all the lenders to these 3 power plants where the litigation is going on and went on. There is only one problem, and the problem is around long-term PPAs, where in the last 2 years there is hardly any long-term PPA. And what we have been submitting from lenders' perspective, or from otherwise a sound advice also, that it is not the right strategy for DISCOMs to rely solely on the short-term PPAs. Long-term PPAs are in fact in their own interest.
The Supreme Court, in a landmark judgment today, upheld passive euthanasia in India. The historic order comes after years of intense debate on whether or not a person should be allowed to die in case of an incurable or irreversible illness. Ashmit Kumar joins us now with more. Ashmit, take us through the fine print of this landmark judgment from a 5-judge bench, a constitutional bench of the Supreme Court.
Well, the right to die with dignity is a subset of the right to life under Article 21, under the fundamental right to life under Article 21. That's the broad legal principle that has been now crystallized by the Supreme Court by way of today's landmark judgment. Now, keep in mind that this was a judgment that came by a constitutional bench or a 5-judge bench of the apex court. What the court has done are essentially 3 things. I'll take you quickly through what those 3 things are. The first thing is that has reaffirmed the legal sanctity of passive euthanasia as was declared first in the year 2011 by way of its earlier order in the Shanbagh case. It has reaffirmed the legal sanctity that this is indeed a legal practice. It is not void. It is not illegal. That has been a clear declaration given by the apex court. The second key development is that the Supreme Court has provided for something called a living will. A living will essentially is an advanced declaration by a person that in case a person, he or she, is found to be in a vegetative condition, this document will authorize the withdrawal of life support. A key aspect as far as passive euthanasia is concerned. This now has also been recognized by way of this latest judgment, by this landmark judgment by the apex court. The third part, however, is equally critical. One of the key arguments that was presented against passive euthanasia was the scope for misuse. Now, to address these concerns, the apex court has come out with very detailed procedures, very detailed safeguards with respect to not just passive euthanasia but also living will, and that is designed to in fact act against any possible misuse. Now, finally, as far as the government is concerned, well, What the Apex Court has done is that as a part of this order, it has declared, it has held that these procedures will only go as far as the government coming out with its own piece of legislation. So in some respects, the onus now rests with the government to come out with the legislation on the issue of passive euthanasia. Back to you.
Ashmit, appreciate you joining us with that. Now, the GST Council is all set to meet for the 26th time tomorrow. And here is what is on top of the agenda. We learned from sources the Council may finalise a simpler return filing process. And that's not all. The Council may also look at bringing extra neutral alcohol, real estate, jet fuel and natural gas under the GST regime. Only a discussion on real estate is likely. There's going to be no decision tomorrow. Also on the agenda of the GST Council is to ease the anti-profiteering rules. The government is expected to announce the rollout date of the e-way bill. And speaking of the e-way bill, the government came out with a notification which looks like it has made the filing of the e-way bill easier. Under the new rules, in the case of interstate movement of goods, there will be no need for an e-way bill for where the value of the consignment is less than 50,000 rupees. But the aggregate consignment value in a vehicle is more than 50,000 rupees, which comes as a relief for courier companies and e-commerce firms. Harsh Gandhi, Director Chartered Logistics, joins us now. Harsh, appreciate you joining us here. In light of what we've seen from the government with respect to the e-way bill clarification, of course, the date of the rollout itself will possibly be decided tomorrow. What do you make of the amendments?
Definitely this amendment basically in line with what we were expecting from the GST Council, that any movement which is moving less than 50 kilometers plus the goods which are valued less than 50,000 rupees will really ease making local deliveries and courier transportation very easy for us. And secondly, if we look at the rules of 50,000 invoice value, those material are generally not moved more than in intrastate movement. Generally, in most of the cases, it is interstate movement, and it is a very local kind of a dispatches. So yeah, for that, e-way bill would have been really unnecessary, and it would have created really issues for us to do local deliveries and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a good move that they're considering using it the way
this will bring in comfort.
Yeah, definitely. It will bring in comfort, and plus, as the logistic is developing in India, most of the cities are under the no entry criteria. So most of the transportation of courier companies, or basically anything which is vegetables, milk, and all that stuff, that invoice value is generally less than 50,000 in small vehicles, and the cities are more than 50 kilometers now, if you see. So they will be pardoned from creating e-way bill again and again. It's a daily requirement thing. So yeah, that way it will ease it, and maybe in future they might consider more. This shows that they are working towards easing it, more relaxing it, not to disrupt the supply chain.
All right. Okay, not to disrupt the supply chain, and we'll see what the GST Council has to say on the new rollout date of the e-way bill. They're working with the 1st of April, but perhaps a decision on that is expected tomorrow. Thanks very much, Harsh Gandhi, for joining us. With that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of What's Hot. Do stay tuned. Indian equities make fresh 2018 lows as the bears dominate the week on Dalal Street. Both the Sensex and the Nifty down over 2% for the week. We take stock of the markets when we return.